Jon Sopel, co-host of Global's podcast, The News Agents, former North America editor of the BBC as well. Have that hat on too. I mean, Jon, it's hard to make sense of this, isn't it? You could see why certain things would be done, might be done, could be done. But there's a lot of sort of vacillation back and forth, isn't there?
Look, you just start with that Pete Hegseth clip. America didn't start this. Well, yeah, you did. I mean, this was a war of choice. And if you're saying it was urgent that we took action when we did because Iran was about to do something terrible, then you are making the exact same argument that George W. Bush made in 2003 with the weapons of mass destruction, and they could be launched in 45 minutes. Remember all of that? And so that is what propelled Donald Trump to the presidency. America's absolute annoyance, fury, distaste at these forever wars. And yet Donald Trump and Netanyahu have launched this strikes against Iran, taken out the leadership, and no one can lament the passing of Ali Khamenei, who was a brutal dictator who killed tens of thousands of his own people for daring to protest about his rule. But what has America started now? And, you know, he says, we will finish it. Well, what does finishing it look like? Because there was another part of the Hegseth speech there where he said, we're there to stop the nukes and to stop the missiles. Well, hang on, yeah, but just only a day ago you were talking about regime change. You were talking about all those things that you said America would no longer be involved in.
He also said this will be no nation-building quagmire, alluding to Iraq, I think, and perhaps Afghanistan as well. But, you know,
I mean, I laugh at that because you think, OK, well, if your aim is to take out the leadership, and, you know, look, fair play to the Americans and the Israelis, they obviously had stunning intelligence on where the leadership of the Revolutionary Guard were, the defence minister, the supreme ruler.
Hence the daylight operation, because they had them all in the one room.
They had them all together and they took them all out. You are going to be inevitably a nation building if you get rid of the leadership and you are asking the people to rise up, which is what Donald Trump has said in terms. The people should rise up and take control of their country back from the failed leadership. Well, one, there is no opposition group that, you know, commands the support of all the public. Two, the monopoly of lethal force is held by the state and by the IRGC and all those people. So if people rise up, there's a fair chance that they're going to be slaughtered, just as they were when they protested a few weeks ago. So, you know, America can say we're not in the business of nation building. Well, you're destroying stability with the current regime. So what are you leaving in its place?
Let's talk a bit about what Iran has been doing for people who might not know. I mean, for a long time, this regime and previous, they have been essentially causing trouble, killing people, bombing Israel, proxies all over the place, Hezbollah, Hamas more recently.
The Houthis.
The Houthis, yeah. The containment exercise that Obama chose didn't really work, did it?
Well, Obama had signed a deal that there would be no nuclear enrichment for a period. And when Donald Trump became president in the first term, when I was living in Washington, he ripped that up and said, this is a rubbish deal. And what's happened is that, and then you think back to last June.
Why did you think it was rubbish? Did you think it was rubbish because it was just too supine?
Yes, it gave Iran too much in his view, but it was also time limited. So it was only a deal that was in place for, you know, I think it was 10 years. So it would have actually run out about now. And so, but Donald Trump ripped it up in the first term, said he was going to negotiate, but the negotiations have got nowhere. And so exactly what Obama sought to avoid, which was a war that could destabilise the whole of the Middle East and go off in all directions, which is sort of what is happening now. I mean, it all might kind of fizzle out, but at the moment, if you look at the number of countries that are being affected by this, whether by protests or direct military action, you hear that Greece is sending frigates to Cyprus to protect it because of the attacks on the RAF base at Akrotiri.
Hegseth said as well, I mean, again, I'm not in a position to test the truth or otherwise of this, but we bent over backwards on finding a pathway to peace in those negotiations. And we were hearing positive noises, weren't we, from the mediator from Oman that was sort of in
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it will take...
It's hard to know, isn't it?
It's really hard to know. And I wonder whether they felt that they were being strung along, were getting nowhere, and suddenly they had the intelligence, the CIA intelligence, that we know where we're all going to be this particular morning, and if we strike now, we'll take out the whole of the leadership, and maybe that just proved to be irresistible. I also think that when you see a build-up of forces, two carrier strike groups kind of in position with aircraft carriers and the weaponry and all the rest of it. I mean, I was in the Kuwait desert in 2003 prior to the invasion of Iraq, and the temperature is getting turned up. And you realise there came a point where you can't have that many people just sitting there in the desert and then coming back. It was inevitable that there was going to be action, and I think it was inevitable that there was going to be military action. It may have not been last weekend, it may have been the next weekend or the weekend after, but there was an inevitability about it.
Let's talk about what Donald Trump said about Keir Starmer as well for a minute. Very disappointed in Sir Keir Starmer for blocking him from using Diego Garcia to carry out the strikes on Iran. I mean, there have been critical voices of Starmer for not allowing that and for being, not my words, overly cautious, for being too careful, for not wanting to be Blair in this moment and just say, yes, anything you like, US President. He's found, for now, a middle way, to use a Blairite term, of not for offensive strikes, but yes, for defensive strikes. Something tells me there's going to be a lot more defensive strikes coming up, happening as we speak around the Middle East.
Well, exactly. Look, Keir Starmer, I thought when he gave his statement last night, he looked so contorted, almost like the logic was kind of making him form weird shapes in his own body. I think that it's a nuanced position that Britain now has, that Diego Garcia can be used by American forces so long as it is a defensive attack, i.e. you're taking out a missile launcher and
you're heading towards one of our allies.
Yeah. But you're not actually going after infrastructure or people. Let me put this gently. Donald Trump is not a man who does nuance particularly well.
I doubt the Iranian regime is either.
And I'm not surprised that they look at that. And so whilst there's a logic to it, is it going to command the support of anyone?
Is this the human rights lawyer, Prime Minister, and human rights lawyer, international law, KC, Attorney General that we have at play here?
Yeah, because look, I've kind of alluded to what happened in 2003 in the invasion of Iraq. There was the UN Resolution 1441, which said that Iraq was in material breach and and there could be consequences. And then there was a whole debate over whether that justified military action. This time round, there has been no vote in Congress to launch this war against Iran. And it's not a pinprick operation. It's not drop a couple of symbolic missiles and then go home again.
It's not the Syrian airfield job, is it?
No, this is much, much wider than that. So Congress hasn't approved it, and there's been no UN resolution of any shape or size whatsoever. So if you are concerned about international law, and Keir Starmer, we know, is a lawyer through and through, then he probably feels deeply uncomfortable about this. And also, I think, possibly, the questions that we kind of talked about, Sheila, at the top about, well, what is the plan? How does this end? What does it look like?
Nobody knows.
If Donald Trump doesn't have a plan, it's my suspicion that there probably isn't a detailed, worked out plan. I think what he wanted to do was to do a Maduro-style operation a la Venezuela, where you take out one brutal dictator, you put another dictator in, but the dictator is a bit more to your liking. And I don't think that's going to happen in Iran. So therefore, what does the end of it look like? And if Keir Starmer can't get a reasonable answer to a question like that, and he's got the questions over the legality, you can see that Starmer is going to be saying, whoa,
I wondered with Christiane Amanpour in conversation with her an hour ago whether what we heard at the very beginning of Pete Hegseth's speech was the preparation of a self-defence defence on the illegality/legality of the war.
Well, yeah, that we faced an imminent risk,
threat.
Imminent threat. I mean, come on. I mean, that sounds like Putin justifying the invasion of Ukraine, that NATO was going to take over Ukraine and it was an imminent threat to Russia. And by the way, we're not seeking any congressional approval for it, nor going to the United Nations. If America isn't going to play by any kind of rules, and I know international law is sort of an aphorism, it has no meaning in the sense that there is no, law enforcement requires
nation states can still decide things.
Nation states will always decide what are in their interest.
Let me just point to this before you go, John. Just before I came on air, we heard that Iranian strikes had been reported in Saudi Arabia on an oil refinery and a major gas plant in Qatar. I mean, this is a very fluid situation, isn't it? It's an hour-by-hour thing, this, depending on what Iran does next, depending on what America and Israel do next. Britain's role in those two, particularly Qatar, but in fact both, they're going to be watching that kind of thing very carefully indeed, aren't they?
Of course, and so is Donald Trump, because, we've seen oil prices spike this morning.
Strait of Hormuz closed.
Qatar saying it's going to suspend LNG production, liquid nitrified gas. You're going to see fuel prices rising. Donald Trump has got an affordability crisis in America right now. The Democrats are making hay about the fact that the cost of living is going up and Donald Trump is doing the wrong thing. If gas prices at the pumps go up sharply because of this war,
he'll know about it in November.
He'll know about it. And Donald Trump cares much more, I would argue, about what is the American public opinion than what is happening in some faraway country.
Thank you very much, Jon. Jon Sopel of the Newsagents, co-host of the podcast.